Um, you guys, Palantir sued the government towards the beginning, correct?
Yeah, in 2016, we sued the Army because we were unable to compete on their Army Intel program. So this story is like all these units, as they would deploy, they would request Palantir. Um, the reason they had to request Palantir is there was an Army program of record, as the government calls it, called DCIGs.
What happens when Palantir takes on the government? You need to check this video out.
And DCIGs-A was, it was the blessed system that was supposed to do Army Intel. Except it didn't really work. $26 billion, many years of development. And you would honestly find it, when the generals came, people would turn it on and pretend like it worked. But it was a paperweight to them. They would just, store, it was just sitting there collecting dust. And we were there on the ground. We were highly responsive. And all we wanted was the opportunity. So this program was coming up for a recompete. And we wanted to compete to win it. The way the Army structured it precluded us from competing. It basically said, you have to custom build a product and turn over all your IP to us, or you're not even allowed to compete, which is illegal, it turns out, which is why we sued. That there's a law from 1994 called the commercial item preference, that if a commercial product exists.
This perfectly illustrates what Palantir has been up against from day one. Entrenched bureaucracies that protect underperforming systems while sidelining proven solutions. The team wasn't just delivering results, they were doing so in real time, on the ground, where it actually mattered. But instead of being welcomed, they were told to give up their IP just to participate. Taking legal action wasn't just about the contract, it was about fairness, transparency, and a belief that the best tools should win on merit, not politics.
The government is not allowed to go custom develop something because that's risky, probably going to cost you a lot more. And as a philosophy, we'd rather tie our investments to things the commercial world has adopted because it means, it probably works. It's been de-risked. Hyper-competitive free markets are voting on and providing the stimulus to keep making it better. It's going to be cheaper. So we sued them. It went to appeal. We won on appeal. So it's a very, very strong precedent. But I think the key lesson from that really is like how hard it is to change just the momentum in the bureaucracy. And one of my favorite anecdotes is there was a contractor working on this legacy DCIGs-A system in his civilian job, but he was a reservist. He got flipped to active duty and deployed to Afghanistan. The first thing he did when he hit the ground was put in an ONS for Palantir. So when his life was on the line, he knew what he wanted to back.
Wow. Wow. What are some other, how often were you guys going overseas?
Constantly.
Working with the warfighters?
This moment captures everything Palantir advocates have been saying for years. Results matter more than process. The system favors inertia, even when that inertia costs billions and fails the mission. Yet, when it truly matters, when someone's boots hit the ground, they turn to what they trust. That contractor turned soldier didn't make a political choice. He made a survival one. It speaks volumes that the first move he made in combat was to request Palantir. That's product market fit in the realist sense.
Yeah, constantly. Like we were in Iraq and Afghanistan throughout the conflict, supporting users. We were working with coalition as well, with UK Special Forces, other places, Philippines, Djibouti, supporting, ODAs. We get on the little, I don't know what you'd call it, the conveyor belt of flights that would go visit the forward operating bases and make sure folks had what they needed. Make sure that their like they would take their laptops to do key leader engagements where like all of the intel was really coming back. And when you were alone and unafraid and disconnected, like this was your brain. This is how you were coordinating things. A lot of the value was doing our part. You can't do it all, but doing our part to change the nature of the conflict from being 17 one-year-long wars to really creating continuity. Like some of the, you'll have Marines who tell you like there are Marines alive today because of the simple fact that we could look back at past deployments and realize every time prior teams landed at this HLZ, they got bombed to shit.
Continuity in war isn't just strategic, it's life-saving. The idea that Marines survived because Palantir let them learn from past deployments is profound. Instead of fighting 17 disconnected one-year wars, they started building a thread of institutional memory. That's something no legacy system managed to do. The company didn't just deploy software, they helped change the shape of modern conflict. That's what happens when tech meets mission, with zero distance between development and deployment.
It was always an ambush. And just being able to see things that we couldn't know because we weren't there on the ground, we as in the current team, but being able to learn from the history and the experience of everyone else who's been here before us made us smarter and more lethal and more survivable.
Any close calls when you were over there?
Not for me personally. Some of our teams definitely were under mortar attack and, a few convoys that took some fire, but fortunately for us, no one got hurt.
Right on, man. Right on. Palantir sounds like one of the main philosophies is founders first, or founder driven. What does that mean?
Yeah. I think one of the we could start by what does it not mean? I think why do doors fall off airplanes? Why do we have this legitimation crisis for our institutions? This is this sense that the institutions we have aren't kind of working. And I think it's because they're stuck in manager mode.
Palantir's impact is best measured in moments like this, when teams avoided disaster not by chance, but by learning from those who came before them. That's not flashy tech. That's disciplined, operational insight. And the reason that kind of clarity exists is because the company wasn't built around bureaucracy. It was built around a founding mission. When institutions stagnate, it's because they lose that founder-driven urgency. Palantir kept it, and that's exactly why it still works.
There's this idea that there's a playbook, and if you just follow the process, everything will work. Everything will be well managed. My experience is it's all well managed into the ground. Whether it's a company or a country, there is no playbook. It really comes down to human discretion, human decision-making, bold leadership, people with the right ideas. And so certainly in our history, it comes from one of our founders, Peter. It's called the Founders Fund. The whole idea is that really the value creation engine comes from the founder personality. And the most dynamic parts of our economy are led by founders. You could look at this in Europe. Europe has created 0 companies in the last 50 years from scratch that are worth more than $100 billion. 0. We've created all of our trillion-dollar companies in America from scratch in the last 50 years because of founders. And of all countries in the world, we know there's something special about founders. There's a reason we call them the founding fathers. This is a unique legacy of America that we should really be leaning into and embracing. And it's more than just did you found a company. It's really a mentality, a personality. When you think about Bill Knudsen and how he mobilized us for World War II and built the arsenal of democracy, he's got a founder personality. Or Admiral Rickover, this guy born in a Polish shtetl, came here when he was 6 years old. Short man, short stature, feisty. He was so hated at the U.S. Naval Academy, they've actually torn his picture out of the yearbook. Zumwalt said when he was CNO, the Navy has 3 enemies: Soviet Union, the Air Force, and Hyman Rickover, one of his own. But he built the nuclear Navy, and that was really, he by total happenstance after World War II, he went to visit Oak Ridge, and he realized, holy crap, this could power an entirely different regime of sea power here, and could give us the ability to keep our subs underwater more than an hour.
Founder-driven leadership isn't just a startup cliche. It's a core part of American industrial success. The idea that bold individuals can move systems faster than institutions is proven over and over again, from Bill Knudsen's World War II mobilization to Rickover's creation of the nuclear Navy. Palantir follows that lineage. Its ability to disrupt slow-moving bureaucracy comes directly from this founding energy, an energy rooted in conviction, not compliance. That's why it remains such a powerful force in tech and defense.
Those diesel subs back then, it's kind of laughable when we kind of think about it. But he did that. He was a 4-star admiral for 30 years. And we kept him in place, and he built one of our last remaining asymmetric advantages. That's a founder personality. Gene Kranz, who built the Apollo program, Kelly Johnson, who built 41 airframes in his life, including the U-2, which we still fly, and the Oxcart, then the SR-71. These people did incredible things. And that's the promise of America. We have these people who do incredible things. Don't squash them. Don't crush them. Let their innovation thrive. And those people are in government. I think the reason JSOC was one of the first places to adopt us is you got a lot of founder personalities in JSOC. that
Yes, you
like
do.
that's how that institution works. That's what happens on the ground. They are entrepreneurs in a different domain. And so then for us, it's like great when you have someone who has the creativity and the vision. I can build a software Iron Man suit around them. I know how to make them 100 times more lethal or effective in the business context than otherwise. When you have a manager who's just trying to follow the rules, maybe you can make them 10% better. And you're kind of just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. There's this constant need for reinvention, right? Like we can't rest on our laurels, and it's these founder personalities that push that reinvention, who see what could be and see what is broken and close that gap.
So it's enabling that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Innovation has always come from individuals willing to defy convention, and this segment beautifully outlines how that energy still matters today. The fact that Palantir recognizes founder personalities inside even the most rigid institutions speaks to their unique lens on value creation. Where others see bureaucracy, they look for the spark, the operator or analyst or leader who just needs the right digital armor to reshape the battlefield or the boardroom. This isn't about making the average better, it's about finding the exceptional and amplifying it. That's a radically different strategy from traditional consulting or tech vendors, and it's what sets Palantir apart.